So what am I going to teach you? What are you going to learn in this webinar? Check it out. This is a free PDF. I am going to show you the link towards the end of this training. Okay, so make sure you stick around to the end if you want this free PDF. The resources inside come in concert pitch, B flat pitch, E flat pitch, as well as bass clef. So obviously this is only a short training. We can only cover so much in this limited time that we're spending together. But using When the Saints Go Marching In as our vehicle, we will be learning the melody. We're going to take a quick look at the melody. We're going to look at the chord tones and the triads. We're going to look at improvising with the triads. We're going to look at chord tones with the sevenths. We're going to start applying some rhythm, and I'm going to show you how to take a rhythm and start improvising with that rhythm. I'm going to talk a little bit about leading notes. I'm going to show you how I might use scales. Scales isn't something that I think about when I'm improvising. It is a means to an end that helps actually with the next two activities, approaching the target notes on beat 1 and beat 3, and then the next activity, approaching the beats 1 and 3 using eighth notes, gives you that ability to play beautiful melodic lines. The next 3 activities, we are looking at different types of enclosures. And then lastly, we're going to look at a jazz etude, a 2-chorus jazz etude that pretty much uses most of the vocabulary that I am teaching in this webinar. Like I said, stick around guys, and I will show you where you can simply go and download this absolutely free. This is Mike. Mike's been working with me for around 5 weeks. Check it out. The way that you use a building block approach and start with things that are very basic is working for me. I'm getting feedback from my jam session buddies that the things I am playing are sounding more jazzy, sounding more authentic, practicing in the right way for progress, outstanding progress every day. He also says, more importantly, I am actually understanding the different elements that make a good jazz solo. It is helping me with some very basic improvisation. Just as exciting is being able to listen to accomplished jazz players and having a really good feel and understanding of what they are doing. Now, this is really important, exactly the type of thing I'm trying to get over with the teaching and also this webinar. This is Reese. Just by following one small section of Darren's program for a very short time, I have already managed to take a huge step to overcoming one of my biggest challenges in playing jazz. And this is only the very beginning. I'm greatly looking forward to seeing my progress in other areas over the coming months. We'll hear more from Reese a little later on. This is Javier. He is a jazz trumpet student in Canada. I discovered Darren's methodology through his free online tutorials, and it was the only thing that really makes sense to me in the YouTube multiverse. Here is a fantastic Clark Terry quote: imitate, assimilate, and innovate. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so what that basically means is we copy our favorite player. Okay, we copy their licks, we copy their sound, we copy their articulation. That's imitate. Innovate, assimilate means to take that, what we've copied, and apply it to a tune. Can we take that chunk of a solo and fit it into another solo? Can we learn it in different keys? Then apply it to even more songs or even more jazz standards. Innovate, as Clark Terry says, instead of turning left, turn right. Make something new out of that phrase. That requires a good understanding of jazz vocabulary. Now, Clark Terry's quote there, imitate, assimilate, innovate, is fantastic for good players that are already playing at a good standard and maybe have some introduction to jazz improvisation. But what about the guys that aren't quite ready to copy those players? If you are an intermediate player and you love Clifford Brown, if you're an intermediate player and you love Cannonball Adderley, if you're an intermediate jazz trombone player and you love Frank Rosolino, that will prove very difficult and very, very frustrating, simply because their level of virtuosity is such that we can't even touch it. I can't even touch a lot of Clifford Brown solos now, and I've been playing 40 years. Such is the level of their virtuosity. So it can be extremely frustrating to go down that route if you are early intermediate or new to jazz improvisation. Also, I tried many years doing this method, copy, 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 and I just felt like I was just remembering, not improvising, copy, paste, copy, paste. Again, extremely frustrating. I've had students where they've had lessons with amazing New York jazz musicians. They practiced all these patterns, all these licks, and then he says he comes to this jam session, he comes to play in his big band, he doesn't know where to put it, he doesn't know where to play it. As I said, Clark Terry's quote is great if you are already at a certain level, but we need to get to that level. So what is working for me and my students is breaking things down into very manageable chunks and focusing on one thing at a time. If we think of all the vocabulary that goes into a Clifford Brown 4-bar phrase or a Charlie Parker 4-bar phrase, it is overwhelming the amount of learning objectives that we could have. Okay, so when we're talking about vocabulary and learning the chords and learning to hear those chords, we need to break things down into much more simpler goals and objectives. Learning vocabulary is the same as learning English vocabulary, okay? We learn it word by word and then sentence by sentence, then paragraph by, okay? We build things up slowly on prior learning. And we need to do the same with jazz improvisation. We are embellishing a tune. We are embellishing a chord sequence. We want to develop the ability to play beautifully melodic solos with fantastic vocabulary, hearing the changes, or certainly knowing the changes. That is what we're going to focus on in this webinar. Okay, here we go with a really quick rundown of how I got to be where I am now. The only reason I'm saying this because I truly believe that I have experienced exactly the same frustrations that you are now. I first got interested in jazz. Someone gave me some records. They were 3 records. It was the Dizzy Gillespie Big Band. It was a Freddie Hubbard record and also Clifford Brown's Memorial album. Absolutely loved it, but totally perplexed as to what they were doing and how they were doing it. Back then, all the rage was Jamie Aebersold records and the books and the chords. People said, oh, just follow the chords. Someone lent me the Charlie Parker book and someone lent me the Horace Silver book. And I found it incredibly frustrating because as soon as I tried to follow a chord, the backing track was already 4 bars ahead. I didn't have a clue what was going on. How are they thinking that quickly? How are they hearing things to play that quick? I had so many questions and no answers. Very, very frustrating. Okay, at about the age of 22, 21, I was introduced to the music of Arturo Sandoval and I was completely hooked. It made me want to really study and practice jazz and find out what all these amazing players did. So I started off just with a blues scale, a C blues scale, and I worked some pretty nifty things out. I could play pretty well using that blues scale, but only the blues scale. I didn't have a clue what chord I was playing over. And back at that time, I was in the Royal Marines band in the UK down at Deal in Kent. And there was a band that used to play every Sunday in the Clarendon Hotel. A fantastic guy called Ian Shawcross, trumpet player. And he used to come up and let me play and encourage me. And we'd do a blues in C every Sunday, a blues in C. Got a big round of applause. And it was really encouraging. And then one Sunday, I was stood up there waiting to play. I'd already been introduced, was ready to play. There was a singer singing a song. And it wasn't a blues in C, it was a blues in D, I found out. And I didn't even know the blues in D scale. So needless to say, it went horribly wrong. I felt terribly embarrassed. I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me, but I could have just given up then, but I didn't. I went back to my digs and I learnt the blues scale in D. Not only did I learn it in D, I learnt it in F, I learnt it in A, I learnt it in G, and I thought, I'm not going to be caught out like that again. Skip through a few years and I discovered Paul Eshelby. Paul Eshelby was the big band trumpet soloist in the BBC Big Band, and he used to give jazz improvisation lessons. So I went and had a lesson with him, and he gave me a whole bunch of patterns over 251s. So much so that I had that one lesson and he said, I'll see you in 6 months. And it did. It took me 6 months to learn to play those patterns. It was only 2 patterns actually, in all the keys. I couldn't have any more lessons because by this time I'd left the Royal Marines and I was attending music college in the city of Leeds. At that time, I was more focused on becoming a lead player and developing those types of chops just to make a living as a trumpet player. But I love jazz and I still did practice it as well, but not really knowing what I was doing still. And even there wasn't a step-by-step approach. There were guys who were telling me, oh yeah, just copy the licks of these great players. And there were some fantastic players there, and apply it to your own playing. Some of it sticked and I could remember some things. And when it came to solos, I was just literally trying to remember what to play. Fast forward a few more years, I am now on the World Cruise on the QE2. I am in Ned Kelly's in Hong Kong at a jam session. And the band leader has called There Will Never Be Another You, a tune that I knew. I knew the tune really well, and I knew it was in my F, and I thought I'm going to be fine. I very quickly discovered, again, like all those years before, I wasn't fine. There was huge gaps in my knowledge, okay? I didn't have much vocabulary. I didn't know the changes. I didn't know how to internalize chord changes. I didn't know how to practice chord changes, let alone have anything worth saying to play over the top of them. So again, I wanted the ground to open up and swallow me and disappear. Moving on another few years, I started creating simple jazz solos, jazz etudes over well-known jazz standards, and writing these out using vocabulary and practicing them really developed my own playing. I also looked at the Bobby Shue approach to how he practices a new standard. This helped me enormously. Around this time, I also discovered or was introduced to the Hal Galper book, Forward Motion. And I basically come to the conclusion that for me, and as I've said before, I now realise many students that I've taught much prefer to learn in small, manageable chunks. And since playing that way, I've made more progress in 5 years than I did in 25 years previously trying to learn jazz improvisation. Okay, here we go with the training part of the webinar.
So here we are with the melody. So just to let you know, all the examples are in B flat pitch, but the PDF, the book that I'll be giving away at the end of this webinar, comes in B flat pitch, concert pitch, E flat pitch, as well as bass clef. So I've written the melody out for you for When the Saints. Let's have a listen to that now. So you can listen to me play it over and over a few times. I've played it very straight as per the music. I've not embellished it at all, but that is extremely important. So what I suggest you do is just check out lots of different recordings of When the Saints, depending who your favourite player is. They, of course, might have recorded it. One of my personal favourites, as well as Louis Armstrong, is the fantastic Blue Mitchell. So that is well worth checking out too. So make sure you really know the melody off by heart. You don't need to read the music at all. And When the Saints is a great one because it's a very simple melody to learn. So here we are with activity number 2. And all I would do, and all I do when I'm learning a brand new tune, is simply play the triad starting in root position. Let's have a listen. Now, a way you can think of the chords is just like a simple arpeggio, either a major arpeggio, which is always the root, the third and the fifth, or the minor arpeggio, which is the root, the minor third and the fifth. And you can just go through that. So if you see G, you can see it's G major. If you see C, you can see it's C major. If you see the C with a little m, that means it's C minor. That's what we're doing for activity 2. So I highly recommend trying to just play this activity only using the lead sheet, or even better, try and do it so you don't need the lead sheet and you're either doing it from memory or just through that repetition. You've done it so many times, you're starting to know and internalize the chord changes. So here we are with activity 3 and what I am doing in this demo. And again, I suggest you do this with the lead sheet and create your own, is just improvising a line playing the chord notes, the triad chord notes, so either the roots, the third or the fifth. At this stage we are not using the sevenths. A way to break this down even more is to maybe just play 4-beat notes or 2-beat notes. Okay, here we go, let's check it out. I have found, and so have my students, that by doing these type of exercises just round and round, you really develop that ear-finger coordination and a deeper knowledge and internalization of the chord changes. Okay, so activity 4, because we are so familiar now with the root, the third and the fifth, it should be pretty simple just to add those sevenths. So in the B flat case, all I'm doing is adding the C for the D7 and the F natural for the G7, which are both the sevenths, dominant chords. Okay, here we go. Let's have a listen. So as with activity 2 and 3, you just keep repeating this and try and create your own version. Again, you could use 2-beat notes or minims, as we say in the UK, or, as I have done, quarter beats.
Okay guys, let's just take a little break there because what I want to talk about, very, very important now. Before proceeding with whatever jazz standard you're working on, it is of the utmost importance that you really do know these changes and can play the activities like we've just done. Because everything that's coming afterwards is playing off of those chord tones. We have to take it as a given that we have 100% know those chord tones. And if you do, it is just a massive springboard for your creativity, and we can slowly add different elements of vocabulary. These might include chromatic enclosures, approach notes, syncopated rhythms, and all that other fun stuff. Okay, here we go now with activity 5, where we are looking at rhythm.
Okay, so activity 5, we are just really touching on rhythm because it is such a massive and important area to develop in our jazz playing. So you can do this with many, many different types of rhythms. You could do it with rhythms that you already know. You could do it with rhythms from your favorite jazz standards or bebop tune, or you could take a rhythm such as I have, like Louis Armstrong uses in his Hot 5, Hot 7 type solos. So the rhythm for activity 5 goes like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Boo da ba da, boo doo ba da ba, boo da ba da, boo doo ba da da, boo da ba da, ba doo ba da ba, Okay, and I strongly suggest you just practice that a few times on your instrument. And then what you're going to do, just to start with, is go through the backing track and just play that rhythm on the root, as I have done in this demo. Check it out. So because this is just a very short training video, I've only had time to show you on the root, but I would also do this on the 3rd, I would also do it on the 5th, and I would also do it on the 7th. So you really getting to know those chord changes. So in activity 6, as you can see, we are still using that same rhythm. A 1, 2, 3, and do da ba da, ba do ba da ba. Okay, but what we are doing is now trying to create a solo using the chord notes just on that one rhythm. But this is very, very powerful. And if you take 4 rhythms and you've really internalized them, just spend a week practicing 4 rhythms with those chord changes. It is amazing how quickly you can make your solo sound super, super authentic. Okay, so let's just listen to the demo. And this is something how I would practice it, maybe just with that one rhythm. Here we go. Now again, I don't want you to underestimate the importance of rhythm, but as I say, this is a short training video and time to move on to activity 7. So activity 7, we are starting to combine different elements. So we're using the chord notes, we're using the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7ths. We're starting to use syncopated rhythms. Activity 7 includes leading notes. Now, for me, a leading note is just where we approach a chordal note by a semitone. As you can see there, I've done into bar 102. The D7 there, I have some leading notes. 106, you can see again leading notes, and quite prevalent there in bar 112. Okay, let's check it out. And you'll see just by adding some leading notes to the chord notes with some rhythm, we're just taking that solo up another level. So activity 8, we look at the scales. And here you can see on the G, I'm just using the normal scale you would use with a chromatic passing note between the 6th and the 5th. The dominant scales, again, I am using the chromatic passing note between the 7th and the tonic. I tend to not use scales too much in my solos, but it's a great springboard for other elements of vocabulary that we're going to cover in just a moment. So activity number 9, we are using what Hal Galper calls forward motion, and exactly where I got this from, Hal's forward Motion book. Fantastic book. If you've not got it, I highly recommend you do, where we target a key center or chord note, and it just really helps us play the changes. And as Miles said, everything is in the pickup, and by using forward motion, using these 3 pickup notes, we are really highlighting that pickup. Now, this can be broken right down. This is quite advanced what we're doing here, but we can break it right down to 1 pickup note, just 1/8 note, and maybe we could go through and just target the thirds, okay? And you can do that from below and above. And then we add 2 pickup notes. Again, maybe just to the third, approaching from below and descending from above. And then we can do the 3 pickup notes and gradually scaffold that learning, gradually build it up. This is what I am doing with my students currently, and they're getting great success from this. Let's have a listen, and you'll see and listen to how fantastic this can sound. So activity 10 is exactly the same as activity 9, but rather than targeting beat 1, we are targeting beat 3. By practicing approaching beat 1 and practicing approaching beat 3, we can then put both of those activities together and get some beautiful, long, melodic flowing lines, as we're going to try and do in activity 11. So here we are in activity 11, practicing those beautiful, long, flowing melodic lines. And we are targeting beats 1 and beats 3 using both activity 9 and 10. So we are approaching beat 1 and beat 3 now from above or below. And this is how it sounds. So rather than just playing a scale up and down, even just using this approach method breaks it up and makes it more like a jazz solo rather than just running a scale. So hopefully you are now seeing the importance of knowing these chord tones. Whether you're approaching beat 1, whether you are approaching beat 3, whether you are using them rhythmically in a solo, or like we're going to do now, where we are looking at a bop type vocabulary favoured by players like Blue Mitchell, Clifford Brown, Cannibal Adderley, and these are 2-note enclosures where we enclose a target note diatonically from above and by a semitone from below. That's how I do it. There are other ways to do it, but just again, it's quite a short training video, so we're just going to look at this one today. Check it out. So obviously you would never play a whole solo only using 2-note enclosures, but by practicing 2-note enclosures, and that's all we're thinking about, it gives us a chance to really develop that part of vocabulary and then practice playing it in a solo. So here we are, activity 13, and it's another type of enclosure where I start on a chordal note and then go up 3 notes and miss one and then hit the next one. So I tend to think of it, whether that's right or wrong, as 1 2 3 5, 1 2 3 5, but I stay diatonically. So as you can see, I'm on the G chord there. I'm only using the notes from the G scale, and so it would be the B, the C, the D, miss a note, F sharp. Then it would be the D, the E, the F sharp, miss a note, A. And you can target any chordal note to start with, and it sounds great. So check out the whole solo. I got this vocabulary, or I first noticed it and thought that sounds fantastic, from the trumpet player Tom Harrell. So, chromatic enclosures, one of my favourite little bits of vocabulary to use. I use them a lot in my etudes, and I try to incorporate them a lot into my solos if I'm playing in a bit more of a modern style. It's a bit more sort of bop, a bit more Clifford Brown, and a bit further on. Saying that though, I have seen and heard Big Spiderbeck use a chromatic enclosure. Okay, so they can be used anywhere really, from any period, and just probably a little bit more sparingly if you're playing more mainstream music. But in terms of the bop, they sound fantastic. Again, not got a huge amount of time to talk about them now, but we are just chromatically enclosing a chord note or a target note, and for this activity we are doing beats 1 and beats 3. Of course you could enclose a note on beat 2 or beat 4, but this just shows how you might want to approach it, as I say, for beats 1 and beats 3. Okay, check it out. Chromatic enclosures on When the Saints. So here we are with a 2-chorus etude I've created over When the Saints, using a variety of vocabulary, but mostly the vocabulary that we have covered in this short training, namely chordal notes, leading notes, approach notes, syncopation, different types of rhythms, 2-note enclosures, the Tom Harrell type enclosure, chromatic enclosures. Maybe there's a few other little bits and bobs in there too, but primarily I've tried to stick to what we have covered in this training. So my goal for you in this class, I want to help you to learn to improvise, help you to understand how to practice and make progress. I want to get you started with very limited knowledge. Help teachers to improvise. How would you feel if everyone wanted you in their band? People look forward to hearing you play. You can now hear what you want to play before you play it. You feel like you are improvising and not trying to remember. You now feel super confident in every jazz improvisation situation. How would that make you feel? Okay, do you think it would make a big difference? Well, it certainly has for mine, and now I'm regularly playing at jazz clubs, I've played at jazz festivals, I have my own jazz bands, and I've also got some great concerts lined up too. So I feel confident that you will be able to take what you have learnt today and put it into practice and develop your jazz skills to a whole new level, giving you the ability to also know the chord changes and, more importantly, hear them. So many students find it hard to implement all of these items into practice. So what if I told you there was another way? What if I told you I could personally help you just as I have Mike and Javier and all the other guys? So this webinar is great to be made aware of what to practice, but it's knowing how to practice and implement everything the correct way that will take your playing to another level. So no matter what level you are, with my expert teaching and knowledge and the ability to scaffold the learning, so we're always building on prior knowledge, you stand a much better chance of success with me. So what if I told you I could empower you with my resources and make your success all but inevitable? I mean, you've got to put the work in, you've lots of practice, lots of work. With my coaching and availability to help you, do you think you could take your playing to where you think it should be? So if I had such an option, would you be interested to learn more and what I could do for your listening, technique and improv skills? That's why I want to introduce you to my coaching program, the Darren Lloyd Jazz Improvisation Program. So what we've gone through today is great, but really it doesn't even scratch the surface if you're really serious about developing your jazz improvisation skills. So in the program, I'll be walking you through a series of well-known jazz standards and practicing them in such a way that you will never be left wondering why or what you are practicing something. I'll walk you through different tunes and focus on different improvisation skills, only focusing on one thing at a time. This is how our brain likes to learn, in small chunks, so you'll never be wasting your time. So you have a choice. Try and do all of this stuff on your own, figure it out by yourself, keep trying to find the next hack. By the way, there is none, no matter what anyone tells you on YouTube. Or you can have my coaching program at your side with weekly Zoom calls, coaching calls, and you can also message me via the Discord app, and I always get back to you at least within 24 hours, okay? And this is going to accelerate your progress so much more than you could ever do on your own. Check out what Mike says here. How are you finding the program, Mike?
Darren, I'm finding it great. It's for the first time in my life, after many failed efforts, I finally feel like I'm beginning to understand the language of jazz.
How do you feel you're progressing? I mean, it's been a relative short time since you started the program. How do you feel your progress is going?
So for a little while, I could tell that it was going to work, but I really couldn't hear it in my playing. But after a relatively short period of time, I think we've been working together 60 or 90 days. The recordings that I listen to of myself, I still have a lot of things I want to work on, but for once in my life, I can actually just look at a lead sheet and get to know a tune and play something that sounds good to me and also people who are listening to it. I really feel happy about that.
What would you say to people who are on the fence about joining this jazz coaching program?
One, jazz is not a mystery. Darren has a key that works for me, and the way that it works, I'm sure that it would work for many people and likely work for you. And I highly encourage it. For the first time in my life, I really feel like I'm understanding how to do it better, and having a lot of fun doing that.
Have you found that the suggestions for my practice has helped you in like real life situations, like jam sessions or taking a solo in a big band, something like that?
Yeah, very much so. Most of my gig work is in more classical things, but I have a jam group that I play with regularly that's quite quite excellent. They have players like myself, who's a beginner, but I'm able to now listen to what the other folks are doing and to hear it in my head. And with the techniques that Darren's teaching, I have the finger coordination to know what I'm hearing and how to play it on the horn. And one, it's very satisfying, and secondly, I'm getting a lot of compliments from the guys in the group that they know that I'm doing something different. So they're the ones that really know, and they're giving me great feedback.
You feel like you're getting great value?
Yeah, great value. I mean, it would be worth whatever it was, costing to get it. But, the fact that, I've always been willing to put in the time, and time is a valuable resource, but for the, very, very fair cost of the program, I feel like I'm getting my money's worth many, many times over.
So this is James, and James is a jazz trumpet student based in Bristol in the UK. Hi James, how are you finding the program?
The program's great. One of the great things about it is it takes the mystery out of improvisation by explaining in bite-sized chunks what is going on with other improvisation, maybe a professional trumpeter, but also what he'll do is he'll give you building blocks to help you improve your own improvisation and building vocabulary.
Have you made progress since joining the program?
I have made progress. The progression is slow, but that's not because the course is weak. It's because progress is slow. It does still take a lot of hard work. So I have made progress, but I think what's great is I know that the progress will come if I continue this over the long term. And that takes a lot of frustration out of practice.
So would you recommend the program, James?
That's a good question. I'd recommend the program if you want to get better and you're willing to take it seriously. If you've got the time and willingness and motivation, it is worth doing. If you haven't, it's not worth doing. And I know that sounds obvious. It's something you've got to invest in with your time, not just your money.
That's good, because we only want highly motivated, serious students.
Good. Yeah.
So questions. Has our time been enjoyable? Has it been valuable? Do you feel more confident in your jazz studies? How to take it all forward? Have you thought of different ways to practice now? And do you feel you've learned far more in this webinar than any other that you've ever watched? So I wish I could share more with you today, as I've studied the ins and outs of jazz improvisation with many teachers and have so much more to show you. I believe you could go out with what we've covered today and you could make amazing progress, especially once you take the action and book a call with me. Okay, and I'll personally take you through my complete formula, everything within the program. I'll show you what we do, how we go about it, and the progress that you might expect. Because what I'm doing is helping frustrated jazz students learn what to practice and how to practice. So this is a transformation statement I came up with. I help intermediate jazz students go from not knowing what or how to practice to a place where they have the ability to hear and play beautiful melodic jazz solos. So develop that ability to hear what you want to play and instantly be able to execute your musical ideas. That is what I'm basically teaching in this program. We're teaching you to develop that ear-finger coordination and develop jazz vocabulary so you can just instantly play what you want. Okay, how amazing does that sound? So for a limited time, I'm taking calls and talking with prospective students about how they could take their playing and improvisation forward. Also to see if this program could be a good fit for you. Okay, so you've got to be motivated, you've got to be committed, and you've got to really want progress. No time wasters allowed in the program, okay? So if you want to arrange a call, somewhere around this screen you can see the button book a call. If you click that button, It will take you through to a page where there's some testimonials about people within the program, but more importantly, you'll see the link to my Calendly, where highlighted, if it's in the blue, you will be able to book a call with me, okay? So I'm only going to be taking on 10 students in this instance. So if you see a time slot, grab it, guys, because they won't last long. Just the first 10 suitable students that I talk to, I think it would be a good fit for you, and you're going to make great progress. You're going to be the guys that get accepted. After that, you're going to have to go on the waiting list. So are you one of these students? You don't know what to practice. You don't know how to practice. Are you going round and round in circles? Are you frustrated trying to find all the latest hacks on YouTube? Okay, check out what these guys say about my teaching. So this is John, and I asked him what is good about the coaching program. He loves the way that it's broken down into manageable chunks. He's found that focusing on a definite small goal actually works, and he feels like the progress sticks. It's also easy to go back and review what he's done. He's loving the weekly Zoom calls, which gives him a nice boost for his enthusiasm and for making progress. And it's good to see the progress that others are making too. Yeah, there's absolutely full support in this program, guys, including a weekly Zoom call and 24/7 support via the Discord app, where you're encouraged to post your recordings for feedback and analysis from not only myself, but everyone else. So James is a jazz trumpet student from the UK. He's not the greatest reader, I'm sure he won't mind me telling you, and he wanted an audio recording of some of the exercises that I've done to help with his progress. And he's just saying there, he didn't have one recorded, but within an hour of me asking him, he had produced a very helpful video. So like I was saying, guys, the support there is 24/7. I just want you to reach your jazz goals. So we met Reese earlier, and he'd just like to say why he thinks the program is great. Before I joined his coaching program, I had a quick chat with Darren about my own practice, my aims and goals. One thing I mentioned is that I struggled to internalize the chord changes to jazz standards, despite having played some tunes many, many times for a few years. After only 3 weeks of following Darren's guidance, I managed to internalize the chords to the classic standard, all of me. Just by following one small section of Darren's program for a very short time, I've already managed to take a huge step to overcoming one of my biggest challenges in playing jazz. This is Ben. Ben is a student that plays the sax, and he is currently living in Holland. The reason I chose Darren Lloyd's program is that it is the format I've been looking for a long time. I am positively surprised by the logical step-by-step approach to the challenges involved in improvising on jazz standards. Although I already have a good knowledge of the chords, I have problems connecting the chords logically. This has become much clearer to me. I highly recommend the program also for non-trumpet players. In my opinion, a reasonable command of your instrument is necessary for optimal results and to prevent you from dropping out disappointed. Check out Alan. Alan is a student of mine currently living in the United States. Darren's teaching methods are just what I needed. He breaks down musical ideas into manageable chunks and emphasizes not just what to practice, but how to practice. Darren explains and demonstrates in his videos how to approach the various exercises and etudes that he supplies. He provides a variety of types of material, both written music, backing tracks, demos, and samples from my classic jazz heroes. Answers students' questions weekly on Zoom, and he's helped bring the history of jazz to life. And finally, he provided some very helpful comments on my early solo attempts. Much more value than I've ever had in previous jazz lessons, online or in person. Really, there is only 2 things you need to do to make this amazing progress, okay? So you need to learn and hear or remember the chord changes, and then you've got to develop the jazz vocabulary to play over the top of that. Now, of course, we need the articulation, we need the feel, we need to swing, but that is all covered in the program too. So book your call, click that button, try and find a time slot, and I'll tell you all about the program, and we'll see if you are a good fit. As promised, guys, here is the link for the free PDF download that I promised at the start of the webinar. You need to go to www.jazzetudes.net/easy-to-follow-steps-PDF. So www.jazzetudes.net/easy-to-follow-steps-PDF with a hyphen in between each word.